Now, Russia's ambitions in Africa have just taken a striking leap forward, eyeing the vast uranium riches of Niger.
Except it's not as simple as eyeing the vast mineral riches of Niger. In this case, something is happening that represents a brand new model for foreign investment and international economic partnership with Africa. Having signed a memorandum of understanding with Niger in July for cooperation in the development of peaceful nuclear energy, Russia has submitted an official proposal to build a nuclear reactor in Niger, which will be the country's first ever nuclear reactor and only Africa's second functioning nuclear reactor. Here's some context to understand why this is such a big deal for Niger and for Africa. So Niger has been exporting uranium from its existing 3 uranium mines since 1971. Until 2023, all 3 mines were controlled by French companies, with the bulk of Niger's uranium production going to France. Now, roughly 77% of France's electricity comes from nuclear power, which it generates using uranium. As of 2022, Niger was France's second largest uranium supplier, and this is roughly how much electricity is consumed in France annually. So it's fair to say that a double-digit percentage of France's electricity supply was for many years directly dependent on Nigerian uranium. Now, compare the figures you just saw with the equivalent figures for Niger. Do you see the problem here? Since the end of World War II, France has built itself a roaring $3 trillion economy, powered overwhelmingly by nuclear power, whose fuel comes from a place that barely has any power at all. In the 42 years that France mined uranium in Niger, it never occurred to the French that a country with a population equivalent to 40% of France and landmass double the size of France might need electricity for its people or might have ambitions of its own. In fact, the only time the French public even became aware that a significant fraction of their energy mix was coming out of one of the poorest and least electrified places on Earth was after the 2023 coup, and even then, it was only in this context. How did it affect France? How does it affect us? Niger and its 27 million inhabitants, be damned. So with this context, you can understand why Russia's proposal is nothing short of groundbreaking. The French way of doing business in Africa was the empire's classic MO. Invest only in mining and evacuation infrastructure, pay locals peanuts to do unskilled, labor-intensive jobs, get the desired natural resources out of the ground and onto trains and trucks heading to the ports as quickly as possible, ensure there's zero localization of the value chain, and generally make sure as little economic benefit as possible accrues to the locals. In fact, the French extracted uranium so efficiently from Niger that they actually exhausted 2 of those 3 mines, all the while making sure that Niger was benefiting as little as possible from all the wealth that it was giving up. The Russian proposal turns this paradigm on its head. Rather than a one-sided extractive relationship, where for some reason one side must be poor and miserable for the other side to be wealthy, both sides are presented with a genuine win-win scenario. Russia gets to develop an important new source of nuclear fuel for its own nuclear program, and then instead of just paying Niger money, which would simply lock Niger even further into import dependency and poverty, Niger instead gets game-changing energy infrastructure, allows the country potentially to explore the value chain of its own uranium. That's more than just teaching a man how to fish. That's giving him the tools and knowledge required to build his own fishing trawler. And it will be an excellent rebuttal to the empire's fundamentally false notion. It is acceptable and sustainable that despite not having a single deposit of uranium anywhere in France, Paris gets to be called the City of Lights due to cheap nuclear energy, while the place where the nuclear fuel actually comes from gets to look like this. Thank goodness for multipolarity.